The camera glides over Wagadoo at dawn, a city waking not to promise, but to survival. Tin roofs shimmer under the rising sun, stitched together like scars across the earth. Children weave through alleys of dust and debris, their laughter defiant against the backdrop of decay. A woman balances a bucket on her head, stepping over puddles that reek of neglect. This is not poverty. This is abandonment. Cut to a packed square. The crowd is restless, electric. Soldiers stand guard, but their eyes are on the podium. Ibrahim Traoré steps forward, not with pomp, but with purpose. His voice slices through the air. We will build 50,000 homes, and not one citizen will pay a cent. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Some cheer. Others stare, stunned. A man in the back whispers, "Is he serious?" A woman clutches her child tighter. The promise feels too big, too bold, too impossible. But Traoré doesn't flinch. He raises his hand, silencing the murmurs. This is not charity. This is justice. We are not asking for permission. We are reclaiming our dignity. The crowd erupts. Flags wave. Phones rise. The moment is immortalized in pixels and hope. Yet behind the applause, in a shadowed corridor of the ministry, a phone rings. A voice snarls, "This will not stand." Because what Traoré didn't say is who's trying to stop it. In the heart of Wagadoo, the promise of shelter is a distant dream. Families huddle beneath patched tarps, their homes stitched together from rusted metal and scavenged wood. At night, the city breathes in silence. Not peace, but exhaustion. Children curl up on cardboard, their bodies pressed against the cold earth, their futures written in dust. This is not the aftermath of war. This is the daily reality for tens of thousands. A housing crisis decades in the making, ignored by politicians who saw poverty not as a problem to solve, but a condition to exploit. Land speculators circle like vultures, inflating prices, fencing off hope. Aid agencies offer bandages, never cures. And the people? They wait. They endure. Traoré's announcement didn't just echo through the square, it detonated. 50,000 homes. Free. For the people. It was a declaration of war against the status quo. But with every bold promise comes a chorus of doubt. Critics lined up within hours. Where's the money coming from? Who's building them? This is reckless populism. Foreign analysts scoffed. Local elites whispered. Even some allies hesitated. The idea was too big, too clean, too threatening. But the urgency was undeniable. In the outskirts of Bobo Dioulasso, a mother named Aminata lives with her 4 children in a single-room shack. Rain leaks through the roof. Mosquitoes swarm. Her youngest coughs through the night. She's heard the rumors. She's seen the headlines. But she's not celebrating yet. I've heard promises before, she says, eyes fixed on the horizon. They always forget us. And that's the tension. Traoré's vision isn't just about bricks and mortar. It's about rewriting who gets remembered, who gets dignity, who gets to belong. If it works, it could redefine African leadership. If it fails, it could bury hope deeper than ever before. And the backlash? It's already brewing. In the marble corridors of power, where silence is currency and access is everything, Traoré's announcement was not met with applause. It was met with panic. The old guard, polished in suits and fluent in cynicism, gathered behind closed doors. These were the men who had built empires on scarcity. Land developers, foreign contractors, political brokers, all tethered to a system that thrived when the people suffered. To them, housing was not a right. It was leverage. One voice rose above the rest. Minister Diallo, a veteran of the game, whose family had controlled land permits for decades. He leaned back in his leather chair, smirking. 50,000 homes. Free? This is naive populism. He'll drown in his own promises. The others nodded. They had seen leaders come and go. Traoré, young and idealistic, was just another flame they planned to snuff out. But this flame was spreading faster than expected. Foreign contractors, too, felt the tremor. For years, they had secured inflated deals to build luxury compounds few could afford. Now, Traoré's plan threatened to cut them out entirely. No kickbacks, no loopholes, no foreign dependency. One executive from a European firm scoffed in a leaked email. Let the boy play architect. He'll learn the cost of dreams. But beneath the arrogance was fear. Real fear. Because Traoré wasn't just talking, he was moving. Military engineers were surveying land. Local masons were being trained. Cement factories were receiving bulk orders. The machine was humming, and it wasn't asking for permission. Political rivals seized the moment. Opposition leader Traoré took to the airwaves, branding the initiative reckless and destabilizing. He warned of inflation, resource strain, and false hope. But his words rang hollow. His own tenure had seen housing budgets slashed and slums expand. Still, the elite clung to their narrative. They mocked Traoré's youth, his urgency, his refusal to play by the rules. They whispered to foreign diplomats, lobbied international banks, and plotted delays through bureaucratic sabotage. Every permit stalled, every shipment rerouted, every headline twisted, all part of the strategy. And yet, the people watched. They saw the desperation behind the polished smiles. They saw the fear in the eyes of those who had never feared before. Because Traoré wasn't just threatening their profits, he was threatening their mythology. The myth that Africa must wait. That dignity must be earned through suffering. That leadership must be inherited, not chosen. In a smoky lounge in Paris, a former Burkinabe official muttered over cognac, "He's rewriting the script. And we're not in it." But Traoré had a secret weapon, and it wasn't money. Before the podium, before the headlines, before the promise of 50,000 homes, Ibrahim Traoré was a boy in a one-room house with a leaky roof and a mother who never stopped believing. Their home was modest, cracked walls, a dirt floor, and a single kerosene lamp that lit his textbooks at night. But it was filled with something no government could ration: dignity. His mother, Mariam, worked 2 jobs and still found time to teach him the value of service. "We don't have much," she'd say, "but we have honor. And that's enough to build a life." When the rains came and the roof gave way, she'd patch it with plastic sheets and prayer. When food ran low, she'd eat last. And when Traoré asked why they had so little while others had so much, she'd simply say, "Because some forget who they're meant to serve." That question never left him. As a teenager, he joined the military, not for power, but for purpose. He rose quickly, not by force, but by principle. He refused bribes. He exposed corruption. He protected villages others ignored. His fellow soldiers called him Le Mur, the wall, because he never bent, never broke. But Traoré wasn't content with medals. He wanted change, real change. He studied policy in secret, met with reformers in hushed cafes, and drafted plans for a Burkina Faso that didn't just survive, but thrived. When the old regime collapsed, many scrambled for power. Traoré stepped forward with something rarer, a vision. He didn't promise riches. He promised fairness. He didn't speak in slogans. He spoke in truths. And when he took office, he didn't redecorate. He rebuilt. His first act wasn't to raise his salary. It was to audit the housing ministry. To the elites, he was dangerous. To the people, he was theirs. And now, with the housing initiative, he was putting everything on the line. Not just his reputation, but his legacy. Because this wasn't just about homes. It was about rewriting the story of who gets to dream, who gets to belong, and who gets to lead. He stood not as a politician, but as a son of Burkina Faso, a soldier, a reformer, a patriot, and that integrity would soon be tested on a global stage. The storm didn't wait. Within hours of Traoré's announcement, the airwaves ignited. Anchors raised eyebrows. Analysts sharpened their knives. 50,000 homes. One scoffed. "Is this a campaign stunt or a construction fantasy?" Headlines screamed. Traoré's gamble. Can Burkina Faso afford utopia? The media wasn't reporting, it was circling. Opposition leaders seized the moment. Traoré, flanked by loyalists, delivered a speech dripping with condescension. "We must be realistic," he said, voice smooth but hollow. "This administration is promising castles in the sky while our economy teeters." Applause followed, not from the people, but from the privileged. Foreign pressure mounted. A Western diplomat, speaking off-record, warned of economic destabilization. Aid organizations expressed concern. International banks hinted at reconsidering partnerships. The message was clear. Traoré's vision was too radical, too African, too independent. Inside the presidential office, advisors debated strategy. Some urged retreat. Others suggested compromise. But Traoré listened, nodded, and said nothing. He spent his evenings reviewing blueprints, his mornings walking through slums. He didn't tweet. He didn't clap back. He built. The silence unnerved his critics. They expected outrage, defensiveness, collapse. Instead, they got calm. And calm, in the face of chaos, is power. Meanwhile, the people watched. Not the pundits, but the mothers, the masons, the students. They saw the attacks. They heard the doubt. But they also saw movement. Trucks delivering materials. Soldiers clearing land. Engineers marking plots. Something was happening. Something real. Still, the pressure grew. A leaked memo revealed attempts to block funding. A smear campaign accused Traoré of militarizing housing. The narrative twisted. The stakes rose. And then, the press conference. No podium. No teleprompter. Just Traoré, standing in front of a half-built home, bricks stacked behind him like a promise. Cameras rolled. Microphones buzzed. He looked into the lens and said, "They call this a fantasy. But fantasy doesn't pour concrete. Fantasy doesn't train masons. Fantasy doesn't sleep on cardboard." The world leaned in. Because what he said next flipped the narrative. The press conference wasn't held in a marble hall or a government auditorium. It was staged in the open air, on a dusty plot of land just outside Wagadoo, the future site of the first housing block. Behind Traoré stood stacks of bricks, rows of shovels, and a team of young workers in faded uniforms. The symbolism was unmistakable. This was not a speech. This was a beginning. He stepped forward, no notes in hand, no teleprompter in sight, just conviction. "They said it was impossible," he began, voice steady. "They said we couldn't afford it, that we didn't have the expertise, that we should wait. But our people have waited long enough." He gestured to the workers behind him. "These are our builders, not foreign contractors, not imported labor. Burkinabe hands will raise Burkinabe homes." The crowd leaned in. Journalists scribbled. Cameras zoomed. Then came the first reveal, a massive blueprint unfurled beside him, showing modular housing units designed for durability and speed. "Each home will be built using compressed earth blocks," Traoré explained. "Eco-friendly, locally sourced.
And 10 times cheaper than imported cement."
Murmur spriet.
This wasn't theory. This was engineering. He continued, "We've mobilized military logistics to transport materials, secure sites, and train laborers.
No middlemen.
No inflated contracts."
Hver franc accounted for.
A second reveal, the budget breakdown. Projected costs, timelines, labor allocations, all displayed on a digital screen.
Transparent. Auditable. Bulletproof.
The opposition had called it reckless. Now they looked reckless. Traoré wasn't done. He introduced Aminata, the mother from Bobo Dioulasso. She stepped forward, trembling, clutching a photo of her children. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said. "We've lived in fear of the reign of eviction, of being forgotten. But now we are seen."
Tears flowed. Applause erupted. Phones recorded.
The moment went viral within hours. Then came the third reveal, a live feed from 5 different regions, each showing construction sites already active. Workers laying foundations. Trucks delivering supplies. Engineers coordinating builds. The plan wasn't coming, it had arrived.
The media pivoted.
Headlines shifted from skepticism to awe. Traoré's vision takes shape. Burkina Faso breaks ground on hope, a new model for African development. Even foreign outlets began to recalibrate. Analysts who had mocked the initiative now called it bold, innovative, disruptive. Opposition leaders scrambled. Caboret released a statement praising the spirit of national unity.
Diallo, en ce smag, refused interviews.
The old guard was rattled, not by force, but by proof.
And the people?
They surged. Volunteers signed up to help build. Students shared testimonials. Hashtags exploded. Traoré builds, homes for Burkina, dignity is free. The project wasn't just policy, it was movement. Traoré closed the press conference with a final line that echoed across the continent.
We are not waiting for permission to be dignified.
We are building it ourselves.
The crowd roared. The cameras flashed. The world watched. But the real shock came when the first bricks were laid. It started with a single tweet, a photo of Aminata standing in front of her new home, eyes glistening, captioned simply, "We are no longer invisible." Within hours, hashtag Traoré Homes was trending across Africa. By morning, it had crossed oceans. TikTok flooded with videos of Burkinabe youth dancing in front of construction sites, chanting, "Dignity is free." Instagram Reels showed families stepping into freshly built homes, their joy unfiltered, their pride contagious. Twitter became a battleground of praise and panic. Activists hailed it as the most radical housing initiative in modern African history. Skeptics scrambled to reframe their critiques. The diaspora responded with thunder. Burkinabe communities in Paris, New York, and Toronto organized virtual rallies, sharing stories of relatives back home finally receiving keys to something permanent. One post read, "My grandmother waited 40 years for a roof that didn't leak. Traoré gave it to her in 4 months." Celebrities joined the chorus. A Grammy-winning artist from Ghana tweeted, "This is what leadership looks like." A Nigerian filmmaker announced a documentary titled Bricks of Hope. Even Western influencers, often silent on African politics, reposted clips of Traoré's speech with captions like a masterclass in courage. But the ripple effect wasn't just cultural, it was political. In Senegal, opposition leaders demanded a similar housing initiative. In Mali, youth groups marched with signs reading, "If Burkina can build, so can we." Even in South Africa, a prominent MP cited Traoré's model during a parliamentary debate on urban poverty. The pressure mounted. Governments across the continent faced a new kind of accountability, not from foreign donors, but from their own people. The question echoed, why not us? Meanwhile, Traoré remained focused. No victory laps, no self-congratulations, just more bricks, more homes, more dignity. And then, the UN made a surprise announcement. The announcement came unexpectedly, broadcast live from Geneva. The United Nations officially recognized Burkina Faso's housing initiative as a model for sustainable development and human dignity. Applause echoed through the chamber, but the real celebration was happening thousands of miles away, in the streets of Wagadoo. Families gathered outside newly built homes, keys in hand, tears in their eyes. Children ran through hallways they never thought they'd have. Grandmothers blessed the walls. Fathers stood taller. The homes weren't just structures, they were declarations. Proof that dignity didn't need permission. Traoré stood among them, not behind a podium, but beside a young boy who had just moved in. The boy looked up and asked, "Is this really ours?" Traoré knelt, smiled, and replied, "It always was. We just had to build it." Later that evening, in a televised address, Traoré spoke not as a president, but as a son of the soil. Housing is not a luxury. It is not a favor. It is a right. And in Burkina Faso, rights are not negotiated, they are honored. His voice carried the weight of generations denied, displaced, and dismissed. But it also carried something else, resolve. We will not beg for dignity. We will not wait for foreign approval. We will build. With our hands. With our hearts. With our history. The speech rippled across the continent. In classrooms, students quoted it. In markets, vendors played it on radios. In refugee camps, it sparked conversations about possibility. It wasn't just policy, it was poetry, justice, dignity, sovereignty. These weren't abstract ideals. They were bricks, laid one, by people who had been told they were powerless. And now, they were architects of their own future. The footage rolled, a woman unlocking her door for the first time, her children rushing in, laughter echoing off fresh walls. A mason wiping sweat from his brow, pointing to the home he helped build. A soldier saluting as a family moved in, pride etched across his face. This was not charity. This was reclamation. And yet, as the dust settled and the applause faded, Traoré's team released a quiet statement. No fanfare. No headlines. Phase 1, complete. Because this was only the beginning. 50,000 homes. Not a promise, a reality. Not a spectacle, a service. Traoré's project didn't just change the skyline of Burkina Faso. It changed the story. In a world where leaders chase applause, he chose action. Where others built walls, he built homes. And in doing so, he reminded us, true leadership isn't measured by speeches, but by shelter, by safety, by the quiet dignity of a family turning a key in their own front door. This wasn't just about Burkina Faso. It was about every nation where poverty is politicized and hope is rationed. It was about proving that justice isn't a luxury, it's a blueprint. And when one leader dares to draw it, others must follow. So if you believe dignity should be free, subscribe. If you believe leadership should serve, not perform, share this story. If you believe the future belongs to those who build it, be part of the movement. Because this was never just about homes. It was about home. And Traoré? He's already drafting phase 2.